My name's Aaron Marshall, aka Intervals on the internet. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'm a guitar player of 20 plus years, more than half my life. I make instrumental guitar forward music of the progressive rock and or metal variety. I've been making records and touring for 14 or 15 years, something like that. Neither of my parents are musicians, but they have exceptional taste in music. The soundtrack to my childhood was equal parts American Garage by Pat Metheny, George Benson, Wes Montgomery sprinkled in there and stuff, which is funny because my dad is totally like a rock and roll guy, but I guess in my, my formative years, he was switching lanes musically, I guess. And there was like a whole world of contemporary jazz and just music that he hadn't explored at that time, I guess. That was what he was into, and by osmosis, that's what I kind of got into. And I was discovering my own stuff as well. My first muses were in the pop punk vein and stuff like that, but it's like a nice counter to everything that I was figuring out on my own. For whatever reason, my dad really liked that stuff, and I got into it too. So as a kid, I think the first thing I fixated on or latched onto was certainly music. Guitar entered the picture after hounding my parents for drums, funny enough, which did happen. But the pivotal moment was, I remember my parents got our first DVD player, and that was a new phenomenon in the house. And they were blown away by the concept of like live concert DVDs. Carlos Santana's Supernatural Live on DVD. If you know the one, then you know what I'm talking about. And it had all the features, and it was incredibly captured performance by all parties. Watching that at home in the living room was like kind of a crazy experience. I was probably blown away by how enamored my parents were with it. So I actually gave it some attention, and it made me want to explore music. That was probably the catalyst for my dad taking me to like a pawn shop. We got my first acoustic guitar. Okay, well, we'll start with that, see if you like it, see if you commit. I could barely get my arm over it, and did that for a while. And then it became a Stratocaster. I learned everything from Blink-182 to Slipknot on that thing. My first foray into communicating with other, young musicians or trying to start a band or jamming or anything was not too long after discovering the guitar. I'd say 9th grade. I remember a friend who was a drummer who was a couple grades ahead of me. I guess there weren't a lot of options. This kid in 9th grade will do, and they wanted someone to come play guitar in their band, and it was like the first time anyone had given me a shot. It's like your quintessential first emo band. The rig was the Midnight Blue made in Mexico Stratocaster into a Hot Rod Deluxe with a metal zone. That'll still smoke most rigs these days too, by the way. I was in like a progressive metal band, kind of like Between the Buried and Me, Protest the Hero. And I did that up until I left those guys and started doing intervals like 15 years ago. It took me a few years into my journey with intervals to find my voice. Intervals has always been sort of like trial by fire, and the first piece of music I ever wrote was released. And a fun fact is there is no, other than the exception of a couple demos, there's no cutting room floor. So everything I've ever made, you've heard it, which is terrifying. It was a late 2015 record called The Shape of Color, which turns 10 this year. Aesthetically, that record is quite different in the catalog. At that time, most of my music was down-tuned or drop-tuned or these types of things. I kind of wanted to push myself to see if I could be as honest as possible in just standard tuning. That was the first exercise in trying to find my voice, and I believe that from that moment forward, I've certainly been evolving, but that was the line in the sand. Amp modelers, I've heard some make the argument that it's chicken and the egg. You can't model something that didn't exist before it. What's a modern modeler? It's a library or a lexicon of these incredible creations that we've had for a long time. Valve amps are special. I love the idea that we can clone and bottle the soul of those things, and certain devices do it really well. To put it in the perspective of the latest record, the rhythm guitars were reamp. I have a Rev Generator 120, and there happened to be one at Sweetwater, and that was just an easy choice. Such a killer amp to get like a really sick rhythm tone with. Can you do a record with all plugins? Yeah, you certainly can. Circadian was. There's something about a living, breathing tube amp that's really cool. Counter to that though, every lead, with the exception of a couple that where I needed something quirky or I wanted a particular sound or whatever, plugins. And plugins are great. The cool thing with where Intervals is at now is it's like a welcome opportunity to blend the early sound with that approach, trying not to be too drastic every time we make a new body of work, but bringing in little bits, little other influences from outside of that. And it's kind of like those three headspaces, being super honest with how I sort of ascribe an identity to a given song, which lives in the motif of that particular piece and how I draw a straight line through it with the top line. And then also wanting to scratch the itch of approaching music the way I did in the early days, which was to just be very riff forward and heavy and more aggressive. When you put both those things together, I think that is the modern interval sound, and that every record or project going forward will just be like, okay, well, where's the current headspace? What's inspiring me now? How do I level up? If you look at the most recent record, it's all of the things that I described with emphasis on modern sound design, a new interest and sort of passion for, sound design, synthesis, things like that, and bringing that all into the fold. So that's how we continue to incrementally evolve. It's a long game. There's a lot more to do. We had a couple quiet years there, 2020 and 2021, and I put the instrument down for a little while and discovered a passion for synthesis and trying to figure those things out, and they found their way in there. But there were still lots of blind spots. That's where a fellow by the name of Jesse Zaretti came into play. I found a DM on Instagram from a fellow who was extending an olive branch to me to say, love what you do, and this is what I do, and if you ever want to tap in, hit me up. And he absolutely was able to see all my blind spots. And the album is the sum of those parts. So I left a lot of my own sound design in there, which has now given me confidence to continue doing that moving forward. It's nice to hear those things in the final product and go, oh wow, I made that. And I like that. It sounds big and it serves the tune. Especially if you compare it to Circadian, where we didn't have a lot of options. Most of it had to be recorded remote. It was 2020. Putting all the fellas in a room, and we made the record, Studio A, Sweetwater, and putting everyone around a console and having that time to really just interact with each other and have the red light on was super special. And you can hear that in the recording, I think, too. Instrumental music is largely interpretive. I love that aspect of it too. Probably why I overcompensate with the story I try to tell through song titles and the album concept and the way things look and feel. I think it's my due diligence to ascribe steady and clear syntax about what it is that I'm trying to tell you or make you feel. Every album is a reaction to the last one for me. I feel like I hit my stride when I get to those last couple tunes that are making the cut. Bottling that energy is tricky because what comes after releasing a record, going on tour? That's a different period of time where I'm allowing influences to come in and really kind of build up and then go home, and they dissipate into the beginnings of the new record. And they're also informed by the last one, but trying to capture the final headspace of the previous record is important to me, I think, because that's how you get that through line. If we want to make modern instrumental music a big tent, I think we need to create songs that have that identity or that have those things that allow the average person who might not fully understand how music in this genre functions, afford them the opportunity to maybe give it a chance. And also for me, without that additional layer of lyric, that fourth dimension, so to speak, the live band and the core of what we do is very much driven by what I'm comfortable with, which is loud, distorted guitars and drums and bass and those core elements. And I embody my bandmates when I'm composing. So I'm thinking about how Nathan plays drums, always have, thinking about how Jacob plays, which saves me time now when I'm composing bass lines because I just know he's going to do his thing. And that's cool. Listening is, if not equally, it might be more important than playing. I think we spend more time listening to and consuming music in the gaps than we probably do playing and making it. It's like an equal split between trying to find music that's outside the genre that informs whatever the directive is. So if it's sound design, I'm listening to more drum and bass. I'm listening to more electronic forward music. The other side of the coin is re-exploring nostalgia, everything that informed what made me hungry to do music. If I had to choose three that were really pivotal, I would say an early one would be The Artist in the Ambulance from Thrice, and of course the entire catalog, but that one really stands out in my mind. It's a deep cut record. It's a record called Say Hello to Sunshine by a band called Finch. That record is really special to me, and I constantly go back to that. Just throw a different one in there, like Death of a Dead Day by a band called Sixth from the United Kingdom. I heard that and I was like, oh, you can do Protest the Hero and Meshuggah at the same time. Awesome, got it, And then that really made a lot of sense to me. Those are those early records where no matter what, I'll go back there and I'll be reminded of what got me excited in the first place. What do I look for in a good guitar? Reliability. Probably put that on the same line as a toneful resonant instrument as well. What good is a guitar that sounds amazing if it won't stay in tune? Or if it needs a neck adjustment all the time or whatever. So these things are absolutely intertwined. Kind of have to put a tick in a few boxes to say it's a good guitar. But it's 2025 and guitars are like all sick these days, pretty much. Yeah, I think a toneful, resonant instrument. Guitar players are so bad at using adjectives to describe things, you know. I want to use the term mojo right now. Some pretty broad stroke, but has to have that thing. This is the latest iteration of my endeavors with the Schecter USA Custom Shop. I'm very fortunate for those guys to create guitars like this for me. This is a silhouette that I'm partial to. I like an S-type guitar or a super S-type guitar. For my first foray and being afforded the opportunity for the first time to create a signature instrument, I didn't necessarily want to do something that was like totally left field or really outside the box. I still wanted to do something that makes me feel like it's something familiar. It's like an amalgamation of all the things I like about guitars leading to this point. Mojo, that's the word, right? From the beginning of intervals, I've always split the difference evenly between 6 and 7 string. They're two different instruments in my mind, two different headspaces. They say different things, they make me play differently. The more challenging of the two to get right and make feel just like natural and intuitive is the 7 string. It's a relatively newer creation in the guitar space by comparison to the 6 string, and it comes with its challenges, right? Extended range, not all of them are longer than standard scale. This is 26.5. The 7 string is the embodiment of guitar, which is compromise at all points. Until recently, it's been really challenging to like find exactly what that even tension and temperament is for these types of guitars. Fortunately, because my relationship with Daddario is so close, that there's been some amazing conversations with folks behind the curtain to talk about how to improve those things. The sound of the guitar starts in the hands, but what do the hands come in contact with first? It's going to be strings, and the strings are that kinetic energy that feed information into this thing. What good is a guitar with no strings? What I look for in a good string is the same thing I look for in a good guitar, which is reliability. And tone, equally. It's the same answer, in fact. What good is a string if you can't rely on it? What good is a string if it snaps when you bend it? What good is a string if you get one show out of it? I'm so used to what I use, which for a decade plus now has been the NYXLs. I would have discovered Daddario the first time I probably ever walked into a music store with my dad in the early days. What music store do you walk into where behind the front counter you don't just see XL, XL, XL everywhere? It's iconic. And when you look at what the big dogs play, how would you do anything else? That would be what I remember about discovering Daddario. I also worked in musical instrument retail for a number of years, so I've sold all these things. When the NYXLs came out, I remember being seeded a little marketing package and, you know, oh, these look cool. This is different. Other companies were playing with like new like alloy blends and things at the time. So it's like, that's where the market was heading. Okay, strings are evolving. Cool. I'm not a coated string guy or anything like that. So to me, it was like, oh, okay, these are just conventional strings, but they're different. They have this like mysterious allure about, oh, they're premium. Tried them out and just like, oh, those are the ones. And they've been the ones for like 11 years or something. To zoom in a little bit more in regards to where we are now with string tech in the context of Daddario and with the NYXLs 2 years ago or so, I was afforded an opportunity to speak to sort of what the wish list is or what the wants and needs are. Guitar is constant compromise and it's constant problems to solve. And then things are in their rightful order once you solve those things, which is really cool. So to be specific about that in the context of an instrument like the 7 string, I always felt that the low string was just never, I don't know, it didn't ring and feel as confident and as homogenous as the rest of the strings in the set. Don't know why that's the case. I don't make them, I just play them. And given the opportunity to take the floor on that, I said, I think there's probably some room to explore in terms of bringing the perceptive diameter of the string down. Guitar players, we're always riding this line, like you want the gain to be like just where it's like too much and then back it off. Like be right on the line and then back it off. Like we're always just like approaching the edge. And I would say the same thing happens here, you know, as that string becomes larger, it's cumbersome off the pick. There's only so many things that you can do when it comes to making a string, but changing how the internal core of the string interacts with the outside and engineering the string to almost trick you into feeling like it's just as small as the one that came before it, but pulling ridiculously confident tension. That matters here. 100% it does. And until we were able to push things in the direction that they are now, I was using 0.73 gauge picks, 0.88. Like, I was compensating in the right hand, looking to try to manage that feeling. But as a guitar player who needs to riff, but also needs to play lead, I was compromising there. So engineering the string to have that feeling or that bounce in it so I can go back to playing a heavier pick. And they just feel super good. In the context of this guitar, this is an NYXL 9-46 pack with a 62. 46 to 62, and they feel like they absolutely belong together. That's hard to do. Actually, in my view, they're perfect. I think there's many ways to do music, and I don't think how you do it makes it valid one way or another. I think it depends on your goals. You can't be everything to everybody without some sort of machinery or infrastructure. You certainly can be prominent in a given niche without that. That's probably what allows me to operate as an independent. It sort of just happened. I don't want to say by default, but just naturally. There was a time where we were exploring opportunities, 2013, 2014. There were some offers, there was some conversations. It didn't feel right. I don't think it makes the difference. In fact, I probably feel more liberated as a result. Here and now in 2025, Intervals was awarded Instrumental Album of the Year 2025 at the Junos, which for those that don't know, that's a Canadian Grammy. For the first time in Interval's existence, we were acknowledged by some body that isn't just me and the guys that, make it all happen. And that is an interesting nexus for us. And I feel really good about that because it is 100% independent. I ordered my parents a Juno because there is no label to hand it to. And in my opinion, the mantle in the living room is where that needs to go because that's how I am where I am.